Urban View family that we have created in this space. Shout out to, let's see, are we on Instagram and YouTube? We are on YouTube. Hey, YouTube. Hey, Instagram. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Urban View experience. If you are on YouTube or Instagram, if you're on Instagram, definitely like, share. If you're on YouTube, please like, subscribe, share, and then hit the little bell so you get notified when I do this little live situation. Good morning. I hope everyone is doing well. We got a lot to get into today, and some of these stories I'm going to pick up in even more depth in my podcast episode, which will come out later on today, which is going to really explore what's happening. But we got to be clear about some of the things that are on the way, and some of you are already experiencing it. Now, this is one of those moments where I'm not going to ask anybody to raise your hand and identify as a victim of this, but you do need to know that this is happening because it might not be you, but it might be one of your cousins, and it might be one of your family members who this is happening to. And I got to say that because of what we're about to get into. So there is reports out right now. How many of y'all got student loans? You can answer that part. If you got a student loan, give me a heart, give me an ad, raise your hand. If you were not one of the blessed who got your student loans forgiven during the Biden-Harris administration, or if you know people, because it might not be you, don't need nobody to identify, who did not get that blessing during the Biden-Harris administration and get their student loans canceled, this one is definitely for you. But frankly, if you are living in this country and you are not independently wealthy and you rely on some form of credit, baby, this is going to hit you as well, whether you got student loan debts or not. And let's talk about exactly what that looks like. According to the Washington Post, student loan missed payments are causing credit scores to drop for millions of people. And again, this is going to impact you whether you've got student loan debts or not. Now, I done told y'all I started working out as a lawyer in corporate law in very hoity-toity white shoe law firms. I can't remember why they call them white shoes, something about racism and wealth, but they're called white shoe law firms because they're very hoity-toity. And basically your primary job is to figure out how to make wealthy people more wealthy. And in that position, I learned how to speak white people money. Now, I grew up poor. So I grew up speaking poor people money, and poor people money is sort of universal. It's got different dialects depending on what racial group you were a part of, but poor people money is poor people money. And I began learning how to speak both, not just poor people money, which I was fluent in, but also rich people money. And when I began speaking rich people money, it was like, oh, actually not even rich people money, wealthy people money, because wealthy people speak a slightly different language than even the rich. Just trust me on that one. And so thinking about what I learned in those experiences was part of what, when I left corporate law, it's part of what drove me to then caring about doing what I actually went to law school to do, which is to think about how to use the law to help poor Black people's lives better. Really, Black was the main focus, but so many of us are Black and poor that they just sort of all just blended together. But doing that in that order, starting out my career helping wealthy people keep their wealth, and then transitioning to an area of law where basically I was defending homeowners and trying to keep them in their homes so that they would not be lost in foreclosure. I was defending people using the Fair Debt Collections Practices Act to make sure that when people were having their debts collected, they weren't going to be subjected to harassment and abuse and phone calls 11 times a day, calls to your office and your job, calls to your family members, to your ex-boyfriend and your ex-lover, your ex-girl. And then people would be facing so much pressure from debt collectors, most of which was done in a format that was illegal. But if you've been poor all your life and you don't know that there are laws that exist that prevent debt collectors from doing to you what they do to us, then you're just going to duck and dodge them bill collectors and act like, it's just your own private personal shame. But honey, just know that those things are illegal. There are lawyers like me who would work to keep people out of debt that you would not even have to pay me to do that work, because it was almost like a pro bono practice. I'm just saying this was a big shift for me. So I'm going into poor people law and I'm realizing, damn, there are so many traps set up for poor people, and what we're about to walk into is one of them. According to the Washington Post, millions of Americans are facing dramatically lower credit scores because of their delinquent student loans. Once your credit score drops, it's going to be more difficult for you to get credit to get housing, to get insurance, to get a car loan. Even jobs now are looking at your credit score, and this has actually been happening for a little while. Jobs will look at your credit score to determine whether or not you are considered credit worthy for them to hire you. I don't know why. I think it's evil and manipulative and diabolical, but it is what it is. According to the report, people were experiencing more than 100-point drops in their credit score. 2.2 million people who were delinquent in their student loans, and we're going to talk about what delinquency means in just a minute, they got over 100 points deducted from their credit score. There were an additional 1 million people who got 150 points deducted from their credit score just in the first 3 months of this year. So while Donald Trump was celebrating the first 100 days when he threw our economy into hell, what he was also doing was basically shifting policies, because again, I know some people like to act like the Democrats and the Republicans are the same. Baby, this ain't the same, because what was happening under Joe Biden is that people were getting delays after delays after delays for their student loans, recognizing that the economy wasn't really great. And frankly, not enough people voted for that to continue. So whether you voted for Donald Trump or you just stayed home and didn't vote at all, this is the reality that we are now dealing with because of those electoral decisions. Now, please don't get in my comments talking about how you always blaming the voters for. No, I'm not blaming the voters. But if you voted for this, then yes, I blame you. If you stayed home and didn't vote, then yes, I blame you as well. Because frankly, elections have consequences, and economic sustainability or the lack thereof is one of them. And that's the situation we find ourselves in now. So this is a sort of credit score drop. When you're dropped by 100 to 150 points, that's like you filed bankruptcy. That's like you went into foreclosure and lost your house and came out on the other side. That's the sort of hit that we're talking about for student loan debts. For student loan debts. For student loan debts. And the only reason we have student loan debts to the degree that we have is because of Ronald freaking Reagan, which is a topic for another story and another day. But the point is, Ronald Reagan's dumbass and the issues and the policies that he promulgated basically created the student loan debt explosion that we now have. And it just so happens that Ronald Reagan made those decisions and the Republicans made those decisions right about the time that Black people began massively entering previously segregated institutions of higher education. I swear the racism is going to be the downfall of this nation. It always is. It will continue to be. But right now, more than almost 2.5 million Americans who used to have good credit scores that would have qualified them for car loans, house loans, credit cards before their delinquencies, now they don't get none of that. They don't get none of that. The sliding credit scores, according to the report, could lead to, quote, pricier loans for millions as borrowing costs near 20-year highs because the interest rates are up right now. And the Federal Reserve is like, what we're not doing is lowering interest rates because the main reason the American economy is in such crap right now is because of Donald Trump. One person and the Republican Party who decided to be a sycophant and skeet their terrible economic policies all across the platform, all across the nation. The Federal Reserve is like, you fix it. Like, you broke it, you fix it. We ain't doing this. We are not cutting interest rates because cutting interest rates will have another negative set of implications for the rest of the economy. There are signs already that people are really struggling at this because we are seeing the rejection rates for car loans escalating. The people have been filing to refinance their mortgages because mortgage interest rates are very high. And if you happen to have a good credit score, and you can refinance and bring those payments down, even if it's going to extend the length of your loan, that's going to be financially beneficial for you right now. Child, them home mortgage refinancing applications have been getting rejected at record levels, which means not only did you apply to refinance a mortgage that you cannot readily sustain right now, but when you got rejected for the application, that means your credit score also took a hit. And if you happen to be in that situation as a student loan debt borrower who was in delinquency, then baby, it looked like you given 200. It looks like your credit score is given 250 and you don't want to give 250. You need at least a good 650 just to be considered not trash in the credit score. I really think we're going to have a conversation on the racism around credit scores. We'll just have to do that at another time. Amina, what time is it? Oh, 10:20. Okay, we got a little bit of time. The report follows a couple of borrowers, many of them Black women, because remember, when y'all told us we had to go to school in order to get ahead, we did that. We went to school and we took out student loan debts to go to school because that was how we were going to contribute to the uplift of the race. Remember that? We was all supposed to go to college and then do better, and then the community was going to do better. Remember all that? Well, Black women really did it, which is one of the reasons why, according to the whites, education is no longer important, because if the Black women can get it, then it's not sacred. And I'm white, and I can only do things that are sacredly held for the whites. Moving on, her credit score of this sister, Tina Johnson, she was 2 days away, y'all. She was 2 days away from buying a used car. And she also drives, she's like a DoorDash driver in order to supplement her income, because a lot of people got to do gig economy type work to supplement their income. Her credit score, y'all, Jiminy Christmas on a cracker. Her credit score went from 650, which is already not great. At a 650 credit score, you are not considered very credit worthy. Now, you better than somebody at 600, but you damn sure not going to get the benefits of somebody at a 720. She already had a 650. That bitch dropped from 650 to 418. 418. Why? Because she missed a $440 student loan payment. $440, which she could have paid. She had the money to pay it. Why did she miss this report? Because she got not a phone call. She got not an email. She got not a letter. She says nothing. No email, no phone call, no letter. I could have avoided all of this had I known, because she had the money. The government ain't tell her that she owed the money. Because remember, everybody's been in forbearance
practically since March of 2020. And the government said, we're definitely going to notify you ahead of time to let you know that you have a payment coming, and just give us a moment. We're going to send you a letter. We're going to send you an email. We're going to give you a phone call. She ain't getting nothing. And most of y'all right now who just got a ding from maybe a Credit Karma or some sort of credit monitoring service, that your credit report just got a shot in, and not in a good way, just got shot up. A lot of y'all didn't know that you had payments that were due immediately. Although, had you been listening to the Lurie Daniel Favors show and the podcast, Lurie Breaks It Down, you would have known weeks ago that this was coming. Not everybody did that. That's fine. But now the car that she was about to buy was going to have a payment of $350 a month. That would have allowed her to be able to buy this car to supplement her income. She can't afford it now because it doubled. Not because she lost a job, because she lost 100 points plus over her credit score, nearly 200 points off of her credit score. She said, I took care of the accounts, but there's nothing else I can do. It'll take me years to get those 200 points back. And she is correct. However, if you listen to my podcast today, which releases at 2:00, I give some insight on what people can do if you're in this situation. Because again, this is my entire area of law when I was in private practice, helping people navigate bankruptcy. And stop being them people that say bankruptcy is of the devil. It's only of the devil for the blacks and the poor. Wealthy white people don't mind a good bankruptcy filing. It's a reorganization. Clem, come on, get it together. So there are tips that I provide in my podcast episode, but you got to listen at 2:00 for that to drop. And I would share it here, but we don't have enough time. So what we're also seeing is that in addition to federal loan payments that were paused, we are seeing that this is not just going to impact the student loan borrower. A lot of y'all are thinking, I told y'all not to be spending all that money and all that schooling and education. And you think that you're good, right? Because you look down on some of those people who was trying to go to school, and you think that they're better than you, but that really speaks to a lack of confidence that you have within yourself. You should get therapy and have that worked out. But one of the reasons this is going to impact everybody is because when credit markets freeze for one sector, meaning a whole lot of people start getting rejected and denied in one sector, it has a negative ripple effect on the rest of the economic sector. Do you remember what happened in 2008? Probably not. But what happened in 2008 was the economy began freezing up because people ended up not being able to repay their mortgages. Their mortgages had been bundled together in this weird white people way of putting things together that don't actually exist, but they exist in the world of finance. They bundled these mortgages, and then they would sell the mortgages on the secondary market. But when they would do that, the note wouldn't necessarily follow the mortgage. I'm getting really legalese, but basically white people's greed in the corporate markets disrupted what was happening. People ended up going into default because they were being targeted with these racist ass loan products that were designed to fail, and they did indeed fail. People went into foreclosure, and then once that happened, it created a ripple effect. And so then the auto industry needs to get bailed out because they no longer had access to credit because the credit markets did what? Froze. Credit markets freeze when people can't pay their shit back. And right now, a whole lot more people are not going to be able to pay their shit back, not because it was necessary, but because the Republicans didn't want to do it. That's all. The same reason like y'all about losing y'all health care and the Social Security. And we're going to talk even more tomorrow about what's in this bill that passed over the weekend. We got to talk about it because we've been talking a lot about Medicare and Medicaid. It's not just that. It is support programs across the sector. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. But we're in a situation right now where a lot of people are not able to pay these bills, not because they didn't have the money. They're not going to be able to pay their bills because the bills are going to increase because their credit scores are dropping. And when their credit scores drop, creditors get to pull your loan. They get to increase your interest. And once your interest is increased or your loan is pulled, that's another thing to your credit score. And that's more money that you got to pay. This is what happens when people don't vote in their best economic interests. And a lot of you poor white people are experiencing this right now. How much time we got? All right, we got a minute and a half. All right, so another piece of news I want to get to. Y'all about to pay a whole lot more money for your steaks because beef prices are increasing exponentially, like to the tune of doubling because of what's happening with climate change and drought. And we don't have a government that's willing to deal with climate change or drought in any meaningful way. I apologize to those of you who are dealing with this reality, but I'm living in it too because Americans don't vote well and they don't vote in their economic interests. But what we're also seeing is that the FAFO is continuing. Shout out to Western North Carolina. Do you remember North Carolina, which voted for Donald Trump not once, not twice, but 3 times? Right. I remember in that last hurricane they had, Hurricane Helene, and they was very upset because they believed the misinformation and the disinformation that the Republicans were putting out that basically said that y'all wasn't getting no help from FEMA, even though they were saying y'all wasn't getting no help from FEMA while filming them saying y'all not getting no help from FEMA in front of FEMA help distribution centers. Do you remember that? We talked about this extensively on this show. Well, what we now know is that because of the word equity, and because the Republicans hate equity in any format, Western North Carolina just got $7.7 million worth of grants that was going to be helping veterans and poor people in rural communities canceled. Why? Because it was called digital equity.
Donald Trump said, we're not doing any more of this racist equity shit. No more. So he cancels this $7.7 million grant. I go way more in depth than this on the podcast, but I'm giving it to you now because this is happening all across the country. This grant was to help veterans and poor white people who don't know how to use the internet because they don't have any access to the internet. And this was a program that was under an equity grant called Equity. Digital Equity Program. And one of the leaders in the community, Sarah Nichols, who is the program manager with this Regional Sky Council, says, we knew having equity in the title of the program under the Digital Equity Act was problematic. So we tried to start communicating that digital equity is not synonymous with racial equity. In rural communities, veterans, aging, low income, those are largely who we were serving. It's authentically the population we serve in Western North Carolina. This woman said, we didn't mean all the equity. We just meant the equity to help the blacks. You were supposed to still help us. And Donald Trump was like, nah, son, you ain't getting no help. We're going to cancel your grant. And we're going to say to Missouri, nah, Josh Hawley, I know you were Republican. I know you supported January 6th, but y'all in Missouri, you ain't going to get no help for the tornadoes you just went through. Kentucky, you ain't going to get no help for the tornadoes you just went through. Donald Trump basically said the following. I've spoken with my wonderful Secretary of Commerce, Howard Letnick. We agree the Biden-Harris so-called Digital Equity Act is totally unconstitutional. No more woke handouts based on race. The Digital Equity Program is a racist and illegal $2 billion giveaway. I'm ending this immediately and saving taxpayers billions of dollars. Except the equity here is not the race kind, but because they don't think very well, and WEI hires with white entitled and incompetent people. When that's your only qualifications for getting a job, reading fine print doesn't really work for you very well. And so shout out to you, North Carolina. You played yourself bigly. Not only are you not getting any hurricane help, not only are you not getting any of these grants, but you get nothing. You get nothing. Shout out to you, though, because elections have consequences. We got to go to commercial break. Much more to come on the Lurie Daniel Favors Show. We'll be right back after this. Bye, YouTube. Appreciate y'all. Oh, somebody said they mustered up. Yes, D. They mustered up, chat. They sure did. Shout out to you. Shout out to Nick Burks. I appreciate the extra support. Shout out to everybody who are in the chat right now. I appreciate y'all. This weekend, we couldn't do much of anything. I had this whole dental situation happening, but I'm back in full effect, although I feel like my cheeks still look a little swollen, but whatever, it's going to be all right. Anyway, y'all, the podcast drops today at 2 p.m. I go into way more depth of all of this, and hopefully also share some insights for those of you who are dealing with the student loan debt collection situation. It's going to be bad. And for those of you dealing with other credit score hits, generally, I put just one little good tidbit. We're going to have some additional podcast episodes that talk about this more extensively, but hopefully that information that I shared today will drop at 2 p.m. And you'll be able to get that. But thank you all so much. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.